Hi, it's Rob from the Brush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint a World Eater's Chaos Space Marine in the 30k colours. If you'd like to support the channel, our Ko-fi and Patreon pages are linked below. Now on to the video. So the first colour we're going to use is Citadel Macragge Blue. I'm going to use this to do the power pack and the shoulder pads. Now I fancy doing the World Eaters in their 30k colours because I really do like the blue and the white together. I think it's a lovely combo. I think it makes their armour look pretty cool, and I just wondered what it would look like on a normal Chaos Space Marine. So here we have it. This is the tutorial that shows you how to do it if you really want to. If not, it's an interesting finish to it. But it does look really nice. So just get that Macragge Blue on there nice and smooth, and then we can move on to the next colour. So we're going to use Citadel Mephiston Red next. That's going to be to do the loincloth. I was debating whether or not to do the loincloth blue, but I thought the red would break it up a little bit more than the blue would. Give it a little bit more colour. They probably didn't really have this armour in these colours at any point. So it's probably not a very fluffy colour scheme this, but it does look really nice. I really do like the look of the white with the blue. So now I'm going to use Baneblade Brown from Citadel. It's going to be to do the belt and the pouches as well. Also going to use it to do the wraps on the handle of the axe too. Like so. Now I've got quite a long layer to come. It's going to be Citadel Retributor armour. I'm going to use this to do all of the armour trim, of which there is tons. You just want to give all of this armour trim a nice smooth layer of Retributor armour. Good thing about this colour is it does go over pretty much anything. It's a really good base colour, this one. And once you have that gold on there, you'll have the three main colours done. He's actually been undercoated in Citadel Corax White, which is a slightly off-white colour. Now I'm going to use Vallejo Black to do the seals between the armour plates. Also got the body of the bolt pistol too. I'm going to do the little tubes on the side of his helm with this black too. Next we're going to use some Citadel Leadbelcher. Going to use this to do the metal parts on the bolt pistol, the tips of all the bolt rounds, the majority of the metal parts on the axe, the spikes on his armour, and the other little bits that you want to do with that. Now I'm going to use Citadel Rakarth Flesh. It's going to be used to do the little bony kind of spurs growing at the top of his helm. Also there's a skull next to his foot on this particular model, so you'll be painting up the skull using the same method as the bits on his helm. Now I'm going to use a touch of Averland Sunset from Citadel. This is going to be to do these kind of Eye of Horus shapes on the side, which is what I'm going to do them as. They might not be too fluffy, but it's what I'm working with. I thought to paint them up like the Eye of Horus I did on the Black Legion chaps had done. Now I'm going to use Citadel Contrast Apothecary White. I'm going to use this on all of the white armour plates. It's a great colour this, it gives you the shade on the white without it being too dark. So I would recommend it for shading any white that you're using. Next we're going to use Citadel Contrast Snakebite Leather. I'm going to use this on the pouches and the belt as well, and also the wraps on the handle of the axe. Like so. Now some Citadel Drakenhof Nightshade. We're going to use this to do all of the blue on the miniature. This will darken up all those recesses in the blue and shade them nicely. Next we're going to use some Citadel Druchii Violet, and we're going to use this to paint up, or to shade rather, the red of the loincloth. So give it that nice deep colour, so that when you start reapplying those colours, you'll have some nice shades in those recesses and around the edges. Try your best not to get it onto the white of the armour, because that can be a bit of a pain to cover up sometimes. Now it's Seraphim Sepia from Citadel. This is going to be used to do any of the bone parts on it, so you've got that little skull at the bottom, and then the bony growths on his helm. Like so. A little bit of Agrax Earthshade. We're going to use this to do the gold. So there's plenty of this to do. What you can do as well while you're painting the miniature is, when you're working on the black, is work those colours onto the clips that hold the bolt rounds that are hanging from beneath, because I don't think I do that in this video. I actually did it after the video, just painted those black and then gave some German grey highlights. Now I'm going to use Nuln Oil on all of the Leadbelcher. But yeah, those little clips holding the rounds together, just give them a coat of black as well, and you can highlight them with the next grey. That will get them sorted out for you. So the first colour we're going to work on is white, so we're going to work this onto the armour. What you want to be trying to do is getting the top parts of the armour lighter than the underside, so you can leave the very undersides shaded, and then in order to get that kind of dark to light, just using one coat or two coats, you can just gently drag that brush, get a little tiny amount on, sort of spread it around on the bit that you want to be lighter, and then drag that brush on the darker area towards the light, and that will help get you that slight gradient that you want. Once the white is done, we're going to work on the gold. We're going to start with Retributor armour once more. So we're going to be trying to get the smoother, flatter top parts painted with the one smooth layer of Retributor armour. And where you've got those parts that are underneath, you want to leave those more heavily shaded and just pick out the edges with the Retributor armour. Basically think about where the light is catching it, and only putting the Retributor armour onto the areas that will be getting caught by that light. To highlight this, we're going to use Citadel Liberator Gold. You want to be covering about 50% of the area that you did with the Retributor armour with this. Just give it a nice lighter highlight. Also, if you've got any larger, smoother areas of gold, you can use this to give it a nice shine, make it look as though it really is catching the light. So what I'm doing on the back of the leg here, I choose one sort of strip from the foot to the upper thigh, and then paint that section on each piece of armour trim with the Liberator Gold. And that gives you the impression that light's catching it all the way down there. And finally we're going to use a bit of Vallejo Modeler Chrome mixed with the Liberator Gold, I'm going to highlight some edges on the armour trim, and that will just make those stand out slightly off camera there, unfortunately. But if you pick out the top edges where the light will be catching the trim a lot more, then that is what you're aiming for. Annoyingly, pretty much all of that is out of shot, but I'll link up a 5 shades of gold video, and that shows you the same style of highlighting on that. Next up, we're going to start working on the Leadbelcher again. So you want to be lightly picking out these areas of Leadbelcher, not giving it a flat coat, just a bit of almost a dry brush or a wet brush, just to get a little bit of paint back on there so it's not all dulled down. Once you've finished that, you can use a tiny little spot of Vallejo Model Air Chrome and just pick out a few little details like the edge of the axe blade, the little edge of that bit at the back, the edge of some of the spikes too. That just picks out those details and makes them stand out when you're looking at the miniature. Now we're going to start working on that blue. So we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Macragge blue. Reapply this colour to sort of the top half of all these areas, so you want the underside of these areas to still maintain their shade and their slightly darker colour, and the top parts where the light would be catching them to have the Macragge blue reapplied. Then I'm going to add a little bit of white to the Macragge blue, just to lighten that up a touch. I'm going to start highlighting the area we've just done. Like with the gold, you want to be doing about 50% of the area that you did with the pure Macragge blue, just to give that lighter shade, give the impression that the light is catching it and illuminating those sections of the armour. I'm going to add a little bit more white to the previous mix. I'm going to use this just to do a final highlight, mainly on the edges and some parts where you've got a bit of flatter surface, maybe to do a little bit where the light will be catching it. This is mainly an edge highlight to get those details standing out. It's handy on the backpack here, or the power pack. There's lots of edges, lots of bolts that you can highlight, make those details really stand out. It looks quite cool once it's finished. Next we're going to use some Citadel Mephiston Red. I'm going to start working on that loincloth once again. So you want to make sure that you're leaving the Druchii Violet in the recesses and just applying the Mephiston Red to the crests and the areas that's more raised, just to give those the lighter colours, make them stand out a bit more. For the first highlight, we're going to use some Citadel Evil Sunz Scarlet. You're going to do about 50% of the area that you did with the Mephiston Red with this one. This will start bringing out that nice orangey red colour that we want for the loincloth. And finally we're going to use some Citadel Wild Rider Red. I'm going to do this for the edges and the very crests, the very tips of those crests and details, just to make those stand out. With this one you really get a nice effect with that loincloth. Like so. Now I'm going to use some Citadel Ahriman Blue. What we're going to do here is paint the 8-pointed star around the Eye of Horus here. If you're not actually following this on a particular miniature, or it hasn't got this axe, then you can speed past this because there's going to be some work going on the axe. I'm going to do a bit of a lightning effect on the axe to show it powered, so you want to be doing the inside of the 8-pointed star and then doing almost lightning shapes coming out from it and around the edges. We are then going to use some Drakenhof Nightshade to shade the inside of that 8-pointed star. You can see there where I've used Ahriman blue around the edges, so you've got maybe a mil all the way around that, and then those little lightning shapes going away from the 8-pointed star as though the power field is spreading out from that. So we've added a little bit of Vallejo White to the Ahriman blue, and we're now going to start highlighting around the edges of the 8-pointed star. We're also going to highlight where sections of the lightning join each other. So if you've got kind of, say, 3 mil of lightning in a straight line and it joins another lightning section at either end, you'd have 1 mil in the middle that would be Ahriman blue, and then you'd have 1 mil at either end, which would be the lighter shade. What that'll give you is nice, light, brighter parts where the lightning is joining, and then darker parts the further away it is from those areas. So now doing another highlight after adding some more white to the Ahriman blue. Once again, we're going to do the edge of the 8-pointed star, and then we're also going to do where the lightning joins together. You can see that power field coming together now. Adding more white to the previous mix. We are going to do more highlights around the 8-pointed star. Not around all of it this time, we're going to be mainly doing it where there's more angles together and things like that. So where you've got those sections where the 2 arrowheads join in the middle, or the very tip of the arrowhead, you're going to be doing those parts, but trying to leave those longer, straighter sections without the highlight. Similar to what you're doing with the actual lightning bolts that are going across the blade, the power field there. So adding pure white this time. I'm just going to use this to do some very extreme highlights on certain areas, just to give them that really bright white of the lightning, where you've got those joins and where you've got lots of angles together to make it look like the power field is really bright and powerful in those particular areas. Now we're going to start working on the leather. We're going to use Citadel Vallejo Brown. What we're doing here is we're going to pick out each of the raised sections on the leather, so you have it all different angles. You've got little concave sections on each piece of the strap. So you want to be doing the top and bottom part of each strap, and also taking note of where that goes underneath other ones and on top of different ones and stuff like that, because it does come at all angles there. Now I'm going to mix some Rakarth flesh from Citadel with the Vallejo Brown. I'm going to do some edge highlights and scuffs on the sections which we've just painted with Vallejo Brown. So when you're going across the vertical edges, you want to be doing horizontal brush strokes, and on the horizontal edges you want to be doing vertical brush strokes, and this will give you that nice rough edge. Looks of scuffing to the leather. You can do this on all of the leather sections that you've been painting, and then just using a tiny little bit of pure Rakarth flesh just to do one final little highlight on the leather pouches and the belts, and possibly doing some top edge highlights on those leather straps around the handle of the axe too. You don't have to do these all the way round on the axe handle. Now I'm going to use Citadel Rakarth Flesh and start working on those bony growths from the helm. So there's lots of little details and ridges and little lumps and bumps on those, so you want to be painting all those lumps and bumps and ridges with the Rakarth Flesh and leaving the Seraphim Sepia in all the recesses. Next we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Ushabti bone, and we're just going to highlight that Rakarth Flesh. So we're going to be getting all the little crests, doing about 50% of the area you did with the Rakarth Flesh with this one. Picking out those details to get them standing out. Like so. Finally, for these parts, we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo White and mix it with Ushabti bone. And now we're just going to do a final smaller highlight on each of these sections just to get that standing out, getting that final bone highlight on the go. Now we're going to work on those eyes of Horus, so we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Averland Sunset. We're just going to touch them up and make sure there's no other colours on those sections. Nice quick layer, this one. Then we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Yriel Yellow. I'm going to use this in sort of maybe the top third, or top 2/3 of each one of these, just to give them a little bit of brightness. I'm going to use a tiny little bit of Citadel Fugan Orange. I can use this around the edge of the yellow. So you want maybe the edge third, maybe, of each part. If you get too much on there, you can just absorb it with your brush. Take that back off again. And the final one for this part is we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Carrowbird Crimson just to do a really thin edging on each of them, so they have that red, orange, yellows of the Eye of Horus. That gives it that kind of dark on the outside, light yellow in the middle that you're looking for. Now we're going to use Vallejo Black, and we're going to reapply the black to all the areas that we've used it previous. This is just to make sure there's no other colours on those areas, so that we can start highlighting those. You can also use this to do the Eyes of Horus too if you want to. Just a vertical line down each of them in the centre. I can use a little bit of Vallejo German Grey to highlight the black. So on all of the little seals between the battle plate, be doing all of those crests with the German Grey. So you have the black and then highlighted with German Grey and leaving it there. You don't want those too bright. You'd also be using this for highlighting the top edges and a little bit of the sides of the body of the bolt pistol too. Or if they have the chainsword, probably the body of the chainsword as well. So we're now going to work on the eyes. I'm going to use a little bit of Mechanica Standard Grey to start doing highlights on the eyes. You can do a German Grey highlight to start if you want to. The lens is originally painted black. We're doing the back 2/3, leaving a little bit of the black original colour at the top and at the front as well. Now I'm going to do about 50% of that Mechanic's standard grey with Dawnstone, which is the second highlight. So you're getting a little bit of a lighter colour at that back part of the lens. And finally we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo White, just to put a spot of white at the front of each lens, and then a tiny little thin line at the bottom of that Dawnstone, and that'll give you that kind of reflective lens effect, even though it's just black and a couple of greys. So now I'm going to use a little bit of a Mechanic's standard grey. I'm going to go back to highlighting all the black parts. I'm going to do the edges of the Boltgun body, as this one's got the little bits of the pointed star around the Eye of Horus, and that you can highlight some parts of that and make those stand out too. Now I'm going to start working on the 30k Worldbuilder's shoulder pad, and this is going to be with Mephiston Red. It's going to be a longer tutorial showing you the whole thing start to finish, coming on Sunday. But you want to be doing a circle on the shoulder pad, so as always I'm doing the bottom left corner because I find that the easiest one to do, and then rotating the figure, so I'm always doing that bottom left corner to get that circle in place. It won't be 100%, but you can always touch that up and just smooth that round, but that always gives me the best circle that I can do. So what we're doing here is we're going to be doing a spike at the top, at the bottom, and a spike on the left and right, and then doing the spikes in between too. And the final part that we're going to do on it is Citadel Drakenhof Nightshade. I'm going to use this to paint the darker parts of the world on that shoulder pad, so they are very faint but they will stand out, and that'll give you the bodies of water on that planet. With that done, we have the miniature complete. So this is the finished World Eater in its 30k colours. Really pleased with how it turned out, and I really like the look of the colour scheme for them too. So it'll be a tough decision for me whether to do them red or in white. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media, linked below. Thanks very much. If you like the channel and you enjoy the content and you'd like to support us, our Coffee and Patreon pages are linked below. Thanks very much.